Good morning to everybody, and good morning, Amona. We're so pleased to have you with us this morning. We're really into fall now, October, and it's gloomy and sort of cool here in New York. And it feels like the year is really underway, and our Help the Helpers is underway. And very, very pleased to have all of you here. And I want to remind you that there'll be a kind of planning meeting next Monday for a short time from 10 to 10:30 for those of you who are interested in helping us plan and develop and mold this project. So I want to begin by saying that in molding and planning this process, we somehow didn't get to send out Amona's title and description. And so we're going to have that as part of the talk this morning. And so all of you are going to be surprised about what Mona is bringing to us. So Dorothy is going to introduce Amona. And Dorothy, thank you for bringing her to us.
I met Amona about a year ago when Amona gave a talk on how focusing meets up with nonviolent communication. Just always been an interest of mine. And I just found it so helpful to me. And I'm so glad that Amona is going to be presenting some ideas about that today. She's self-trained in nonviolent communication and has been studying it for a while now. And Amona started her journey about 30 years ago as a Feldenkrais student and then a practitioner, and has had a daily meditation practice for many, many years. She also offers courses in different areas, particularly around focusing, and has done this since the late 90s. She's a certified focuser since 2013. And she's always been very intrigued by inner work, but she also is very concerned with how we reach the larger communities of the world. And that's really evidenced by the workshops that she gives. So I'm really happy to have her with us. And just so you know, she's speaking from Berlin today and is from Leipzig, Germany. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Dorothy. And thanks very much for inviting me here. I haven't joined the Help for Helpers meetings simply because I usually have my focusing courses on Mondays. So I have a little gap now and maybe some changes hopefully in the future to be able to join. Yes, but I have watched some of the videos which I really enjoyed. So that's my insight of this group. So I just heard about 10 minutes ago that there was a difficulty with sending the title and a text. So I'm going to read this right now, what we're going to do, okay? So many of you don't know what they're getting into. The art of asking for what you need. Focusing meets nonviolent communication. We will briefly touch on an experiment with some basic aspects of nonviolent communication, a systematic pathway for recognizing and communicating our feelings, needs, and wishes. Combined with the focusing way of aimless inner listening into what's initially vague and fuzzy, the nonviolent communication process for fruitful communication attains a greater depth. This practice can release us from stuck places in which both parties might not have felt heard and respected. Instead of pointing fingers at others in blame or at ourselves causing shame, this conscious form of communication, clear, honest, and warm-hearted, can magically open doors for meeting everybody's needs. At first, I'd like to ask if those of you who have never gotten into nonviolent communication, never experimented with it, don't know the basic 4 steps, if you could raise your hand, either if you're with your video on, with your real hand maybe, and those who don't have video on with a technical feature that we have here. Okay, it seems like only 2 of you, is that right? 3? Okay. Okay. So there's quite a bit of experience and some don't have experience. So the main challenge I was facing in preparing today is thinking, okay, I'm going to introduce a whole new modality, and there's going to be people who are completely new to this, others have experience, and how to make it so that I explain the very basics, and yet it's interesting for those who have experience. So I hope I'm going to manage to bring it all under one cover in like 25 minutes of talking, which was an interesting challenge. And I'm going to actually bring this challenge that I had into what I'm going to be talking about today. So what I will do is I will first explain the 4 basic steps that are used in nonviolent communication. And then I'm going to say a little bit more about why I say that's a systematic approach, and why I say focusing can add more depth to nonviolent communication. So that's hopefully for everybody to understand. I think it's pretty simple. And then I will show a little bit of an unusual way of my own process, how I have used it. And yeah, so just to see and to encourage like how we can use these processes creatively in a different ways than how they were created. And so then we have time for sharing as usual. After that, we have a group guided practice, and the breakout rooms and sharing after that. I really hope everybody can stay till the very end, because the way I've structured it, if you go out before the guided process or before the breakout rooms, there's really something missing. So it would be great if you have the time. Wonderful. What else? I recommend you have pen and paper. It's easier. This process is easier if you write things down, especially if you don't have a partner to communicate with. And I will also show some things. I will share my screen. I will show some things. So I hope nobody's on a cell phone. I will also read what I share, so you don't miss anything. It's just easier to also see it. Okay, let's see. Anything else? Is there anything before I start with the actual content, before I start sharing the screen? Any needs here right now? It's interesting. Well, anyway, I won't see people while I share my screen, but there's lots of people without camera. Maybe you have a good reason, but maybe you'd like to, at some point, at least in the sharing part, join in.
Yes, I encourage everybody to put on their camera, even if you're eating your breakfast or drinking your coffee. I'm drinking my coffee too. I think it's fine to have your camera on.
Okay, so I'll share my screen. Let's see. 4 basic steps. You have or will be in a difficult situation. Look at it the following way. Describe the situation. Then say, I felt this and that. I need and I wish. Now this, I will talk about each one more, how this works. Situation, I feel, I need, I wish. So, oh, hold on. That's not what I wanted to show. Ah, I have to make this small. Still navigating my screen here. Usually I have a second monitor, but I'm not at my home. All right, so each one. Situation. So as you describe the situation, something that you can observe with your eyes, what happened? No interpretation of how you were treated and not your feelings. So I have given different examples how not to do it and how to do it. First example, how not to do it. You are always distracted when I talk about practical matters. I've underlined what I'm referring to. We always talk about this moment rather than, always, future, past, right now, what's happening right now. That's the always. The word distracted, you are always distracted. I'm here assuming that I know that the other is distracted. Can I know for sure that the other is distracted? Something seems to be giving me a cue that makes me assume this person is distracted. The next example, you disagree with my viewpoints. Did you disregard my viewpoints when we talk about practical matters? Here's something similar. I'm telling the person what they're doing, they disregard my viewpoints, which is what I seem to see. Can I know for sure? And the third example, while we talk about practical matters, you often look out the window. Now, this is a description of what actually happened in that moment. And for me, there's all these three examples refer to the same situation. So for me personally, let's say I sit there, we talk, the person looks out the window, is a cue that I feel the person is distracted or disregards my viewpoint. So that's my conclusion. But the cue itself, what took place, is looking out the window. So it's very easy to not describe it in this very clear way. And it's very important in nonviolent communication to really just what happened, okay? The next step is, okay, now we have the situation. What did I feel then? Felt in the body, emotions, and inner atmosphere. So as you try to describe, you sense freshly, and it's not your thoughts. An example when that happens. So again, referring to the prior example, when we talked about practical matters, you looked out the window. You are not taking me seriously. You step on my feelings. Maybe you can see that's not my feeling. It's again something I'm telling the other person, what they are doing to me. And instead, how to describe it? I feel cold and heavy inside, lonely somehow. So I'm really sensing, what is it in me that's happening at this moment? Okay. Now the next thing is we listen to what of the basic human needs was not met that made me feel the way I feel. So needs, as defined in nonviolent communication, are needs universally shared by all human beings. Difficult feelings arise when you have the sense that your basic needs are not being met. So here you might say, I need to have a sense of shared presence, cooperation, mutual participation. So in the situation, the fact that when we talk about practical matters, the other always looks out the window frequently, makes me feel that we're not in cooperation with each other, trying to figure this out together, let's say. And so then I feel this loneliness and heaviness inside. So that was the need underneath that wasn't met from my perspective. And the wish is always a wish, concrete, doable, measurable action, or actually not doing an action. It could also be stop doing an action that would meet your needs and beautify your life. How not to do it? Can you please listen to me? Why? Because it's a very general expression, and my sense of feeling listened to is very different from many other people's senses of when they feel listened to. So we all notice very well from focusing how every focuser has different wishes as how they want to be listened to. So this isn't telling the other person what we actually wish from them. Can you agree to look at me while I speak? Now, in order to be that precise with my expression, I have to really check with myself, what was the cue? What happened precisely that made me feel the person is not listening to me, so that I can ask for something where the person has a chance to either say yes or no. Yes, I'm willing to do that, or no, that for whichever reason they're not willing to do that. But it's a clear action. Okay, so let's see. I think unless something is really important, I'm going to go through one more page till I give some space. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this I'm pointing out with this how systematic nonviolent communication is, how we dissect the different aspects of what's happening in that moment, becoming like pretending to become neutral, just describing the situation, and no interpretation, no feelings, just a situation, and then to go step by step with what is also there. And in my experience, this can be very, very helpful. And I've noticed that when, let's say, someone feels easily triggered or hurt or something, a lot of times when I go with this person through the step-by-step process, everything gets kind of mixed. It seems to almost be impossible to describe the situation without also putting the feelings in right away. And this mixedness has something to do with having a hard time to communicate. So yes. So now the next aspect I want to talk about is the focusing aspect. So I'm saying in the description, with the focusing ways of aimless inner listening into what's initially vague and fuzzy, the nonviolent communication process for fruitful communication attains a greater depth. How so? Now, how we perceive or believe to be treated is often on the surface of our awareness. So I'm abandoned, attacked, insulted, rejected, taken for granted, dropped, misunderstood, violated. As you will see later when we do the guided practice, there's many more of those words. But if you think back the examples that I just gave, it's the same principle here. All of those words are pointing out to the other, how I believe to be treated by the other. Do I know for sure that's so? It seems sometimes very, very, very clear. That's how I'm being treated. But if we really question, we can never know. I would like to give an example, which is, for example, I was living in Chicago for many years, coming from Germany. And so when I went to the restaurants first, the way the servers are is radically different than in Europe. The servers, I'm going to describe, the servers come all the time. They come every, let's say, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, check with you if everything's good, if you're fine, if you want something else. They bring you the bill very quickly in the end. A lot of times when you've just placed your fork onto the plate and you're finished, then they come and take the plate away. Now, what I've learned over time is that that's a cue for attentiveness of the server. They're really there with you. In Europe, none of that happens. If you want the server to come to you, you have to raise your hand or give some sort of signal, otherwise they just won't show up. And I've experienced how Americans, when they came visit, thought they were really unpolite, they were not treated well, they were not seen. So their interpretation based on their conditioning was radically different on mine, being born in Europe. But then when I go to Asia, and where there's a lot more people go out to eat, it's more of a everyday thing a lot of times rather than something fancy. It's a service where you get food and oftentimes not more. You don't get any of that politeness around it. So then I kind of start feeling weird. How are they treating me here? It's just the culture. They're not, they don't mean it the way I take it. So that's why I want to say any of these perceptions are very, very subjective, and but it's hard to realize that. So with focusing, it's so nice, as we all know, to go deeper into that. So focusing facilitates getting the actual sense, the feel of it. What is it? The more. So the focuser says, when this and that happened, I felt rejected. And then the companion or the focuser self-guiding, when such and such happened, something in you felt rejected. And maybe there's a place in the body where you can feel that. Or you felt rejected, and as you remember this moment of feeling rejected, you might sense freshly now how it is inside of you, the emotional quality. Or you felt rejected, and you might sense what quality or atmosphere that brings in you now, feeling rejected. So we really have a way of saying, well, that's not a real feeling, rejected, but we have a way of just entering. There's something that feels rejected. And that's, to me, where the depth and the beauty of focusing lies. The sensing for more and pausing and staying with. So that's how I see it can really add to nonviolent communication. Okay, so I'm going to stop the sharing here to pause for a moment. I do want to show one more thing. I just want to make sure, for those who are new to nonviolent communication, if there's any question, any comment, if there's anything important right now before I share my last page. Okay, all right, I'm going to share one more page, which is my personal process. And I'm sharing this because I think it's interesting for all those with lots of experience also. As I said, I had a hard time with thinking, how do I fit everything in and don't make it overcrowded. A week ago exactly, when I started putting my material together, I had all these emotions come up around it. And then I used the nonviolent communication steps to listen inside of me. And it was just a means to become clear of me inside of me. It wasn't like because I was intending to communicate anything to anybody else. And so I'll share this with you. All right, so I did this process, and so here I described the situation that gave me a hard time. Presenting nonviolent communication and help for helpers in past presentations, I did not fit into the time frame what I felt was needed. This reflection is the shortest so far. So this is the situation, and part of the situation is, my thought is, it is impossible to offer something deeply meaningful in this time frame. So this is what I'm facing, or what I was facing a week ago. And then I checked what feelings come up with the situation. I looked at the feelings lists. We're going to use them later in the process. Scared, agitated, unsettled, nervous, shaky. So those were the words on the list that jumped out on me, that were like, okay, this is what I feel. And then I checked, with this thought, it's impossible to offer something deeply meaningful. If that was to happen, if I don't succeed to do that, which of my needs might not be met. And this is a future projection, right? That's a week ago projecting myself into the future, because my feelings must be coming from somewhere, from a concern that which needs are not met. And this is what came up: the need for appreciation, for belonging, for community, for self-respect, and to matter. Again, I looked at the list. Here already, I was very surprised, because to me, the words appreciation, respect, and to matter made a lot of sense in offering something meaningful. But I was surprised that the words belonging and community jumped out at me, which really gave me a sense of that this fear I had at the moment was much bigger than just trying to present something meaningful. Like what in me would assume that if I cannot do that, I would lose belonging and community. But something in me felt that way. Yeah. So that was already an aha moment for me. It was like, oh, wow, that's big. So then spontaneous sense of self-compassion happened right there when I saw this before my eyes, not a self-pity. Natural pause, recognizing, acknowledging that I had accepted a task that was not easy in my mind. And what I didn't write here, but this recognition of belonging and community, that really opened my eyes in that moment too. So that was a important seeing. So then I thought, okay, what is my wish? I came up with a wish. No matter if I succeed in offering something meaningful, I would like to be looked at with kind eyes. So that came. And as I stayed with that, the question was, am I asking this to myself or to others? Do I want to look at myself with kind eyes or others? Obviously, both preferably, but it really became quite obvious that this is my self-doubt, that really within myself, I would like to hold myself gently. So it's actually a self-request or a self-wish. If I would offer this wish to other people, I would have to become more precise, as I explained earlier. To be looked at with kind eyes, if I say that to someone, well, how are they supposed to know what that means to me? Looked at with kind eyes. They still don't know what to do really with that. But I can ask that wish to myself, because within myself, I know what that is. I know how it feels. I know how I can encourage that within myself. So as a self-wish, I feel it's very valid. And I'll just read all together how that works. Once you went through all the steps and then you just combine them. When I think of the short time frame available, I feel really shaky and unsettled. If I do not manage to offer something meaningful, my need for appreciation, self-respect, belonging, and community are threatened. No matter if I succeed, I would like to be looked at with kind eyes. So that was my process. The only thing I can say, what does this do? It changes something inside, and I was different after this process than before. That's basically all I want to say. So I'll stop sharing, and yes. And now I'm very curious to hear from all of you. Yes. And let's see, let me look at the time. My suggestion would be, I know it's short, but my suggestion would be to only take about 10 minutes, and we have sharing in the end again to have in between the guided and breakout room practice. Yeah, so.
Sounds fine. We have 10 minutes and then we'll have our attunement, and then I think we're doing good.
Okay.
There's so much to respond to here, and maybe we need a minute just to see what. A lot came in me there.
I'd like to make a comment. It's BJ. First, Mona, thank you so much for the second part of what you did, because it really brought it alive in a way for folks that don't know or haven't practiced NVC on a regular basis. And then secondly, just a personal observation. I am about Marshall Rosenberg, like many of you are about Gene Ginlin. I knew him, and I was in 3 7-day retreats with him. So knew him just in that capacity, but saw that these 4 little things can really transform in the same way that focusing can. And it's just a matter of then being willing to do the discipline to take it deeper and deeper, and to practice on one's own. So you offer it to somebody, and then you just say that to them. And if they want to join a practice group and continue it, but each of these 4 steps becomes more and more sophisticated and finely delineated. And there are so many parallels with NVC and focusing that it's just astonishing. And Amona, thank you for doing the reflection you did on the parallels. I was really tickled to find that Marshall Rosenberg was at the University of Chicago at the same time that Gene Ginlin was. And I just have this idea that at some point they must have been in the library together and breathed the same air or something, because there's something foundational in this process as well that just changes in a minute. It can change your life in a minute. And I'll say one more thing and then be done. I was leading an NVC group, and something that had tortured me my whole life was the way I cannot sit in my chair. I cannot be still. And so it led me to all kinds of acting out as a child, and all kinds of losing jobs as an adult, and just on and on. And then one day I was leading this NVC group and almost crying. And I said, I was trying to describe how I felt. And then I said, what could I possibly need? Because all the other parts were pushing me down. I was bad. I was wrong. Look at how I was not accepted. And some shy little man over in the corner, who I didn't even know he was, said, well, maybe you need stimulation. And that changed my life. But I found out later I have ADHD. I started taking medicine, and then I could see that part of me that just needed stimulation when I was 4, when I was 6, and when I was 20. Then it went on and on, because I chose to discipline myself and to go further. So that's it for me. Thank you, Amona, so much.
Thanks, BJ. Thank you.
This is Shashi. You know, when I was a bit late in coming in, and when I heard you, I thought maybe you're talking about how to do focusing with couples. That's how it felt like to me. And I think you presented the whole thing.
It's beautiful coming late.
You presented the whole thing, you know, in a short time, in a very concise manner, that it makes me interested in learning about it more. It's too bad I can't attend the whole full session today because I have to go someplace. But I just wanted to let you know that you did a wonderful job. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank
and
you,
it makes
Sashi.
me curious too. It makes me curious to know more about it. I'm going to look into it. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Sashi. And now you put a new seed of inspiration, focusing for couples with some of that.
Great idea. And Shashi, it will be on YouTube, so you'll be able to see the rest of it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I was very excited about the idea of a dialogue about NVC and Gene Ginlin's paper, Fitting In, Pouring Out, and Relating, and how they come together there. And the 2 processes of something that you do inside yourself to focus on something when there's a conflict or a rupture, and then what you do with the other person. And sometimes I think it's important, like you did, Amona, to focus inside yourself first, before approaching the other person. And I was thinking that the example of which was a couple probably example, right, of the one person feeling that the other was distracted when the other, who I thought was a man, was looking out the window in my mind. And
Yes.
right, and then what that person needs to do inside themselves, and then the approach to the other, and then the listening to the other, and then the expressing the need, the wish, the need and the wish. So something, there's a kind of focusing step in there of the listening to the response of the other when you bring it up, before you come with your need and your wish, or maybe between the need and I don't know. That's where my mind went, of how those go together. So I enjoyed that enormously, and it's just a beginning. And I'm sure that we'll do further, conversations about NVC.
Yes, and in the guided practice, we'll add something how we can listen into the others, so to speak. And I just want to say the way I use nonviolent communication for myself is most of the time after an event happened and I feel uneasy about it, unresolved. So I'll sit down, go through the 4 steps, or through the 4 steps for myself, and projecting myself into the other. How was it for them? And it takes me an hour and a half typically for this process alone. It seems very simple at first sight, but it takes a long time to really get clarity inside. And when that happened, if I feel at peace with what happened in the past, and I might talk to the person or I might not, it really doesn't matter, because it's much bigger than this one event. Yes, I guess every step where I find more inner clarity, even if it's in retrospect, is gonna manifest somehow in the future. It isn't so important anymore a lot of times, the actual conversation. Yeah, and sometimes just concrete steps come out of it. I step closer, I step away from someone, whatever. It doesn't matter so much, but it comes from a peaceful place.
Yeah.
So this is Mary. As you spoke that, it made me realize the nonviolence is often towards yourself.
A good point.
Yeah. It ends up being that way, that it's just you stop being violent towards yourself, not necessarily to another person. Anyway, that just occurred.
And in some way, that's kind of a good metaphor for like just remembering about a nonviolent communication towards myself and others. It's that there are so many different parts that need to be heard in me and the other. And so when you gave your example, it was just a sense of joy. And it's like, oh, yes, that there is an intelligence there, an intelligent practice, And I remember hearing Marshall Rosenberg saying, can you tell me what you need without me feeling like an idiot, that it goes out beyond right and wrong, and it's the need even to communicate or connect, so with that and focusing both, the jackal speak and the giraffe speak, it's just a sense of kind of healing, that there's even a community on a Monday morning invested in finding ways of communicating nonviolently, you know, that we have something to say, we have needs, and it's out beyond labels of narcissism and victim and bullies and all of those nasty, ugly words that we use in ourselves and on others violently. And it's that there is a way, and just you're applying that to your own process was such a joy. It was like, oh yeah, this works, you know, rather than maybe if you had really not shared that. There was something about the art of sharing yourself was deeply healing for me in a few stop processes that I have had given up hope of, like, because it's so tangled, you know. So I'm really grateful. And the gratefulness is a value and a pleasure in my body, you know, not just saying I'm grateful. It's like, oh, thank God, you know. So thank you, Mona.
Thank you, Pauline. And I'm sorry I didn't hear the beginning because I lost connection again. I'm now connecting to my cell phone. It's weird. I don't usually have trouble in the space, but whatever.
Okay.
Something's happening today. So I'll listen to it on the video again when it's put on YouTube.
Great.
Yes,
Thank you.
to the first part. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. So I'm checking if it would be okay if we just do some practice now, group guided. Is that fine?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I think there was one more sharing that wanted to come if it feels okay.
Okay.
Rachel looks like she turned off her mute.
Okay. I didn't see that. Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you so much for this. It's such a wonderful thing. I hope you'll do a whole series if you haven't already. One of the things I wanted to ask, and I was also a few minutes late, so I don't know if this was already said, but if you wouldn't mind sharing the handouts, they were so helpful, and I feel like I want to post them in front of myself, not while I'm driving possibly, but everywhere else. It's so helpful. And what Lynn was saying about the crossing over of Jean's article, of the pouring out and fitting in and that business, it seems like, and I can't quite remember, like right in the first couple of steps, it feels like that's where, for me anyway, I lose my, Marshall Rosenberg, and that's where I pour out, and I think I'm saying I feel, but I'm really saying I feel like you're a narcissistic bastard. I feel that you are a fascist, and that's where I lose that seems to be where there's much more time needed. Like Lynn will say, strike while the iron is cold. But who wants to express themselves when the iron is cold? It's that hot iron that really wants to totally damage the relationship ultimately, but that really feels like it needs that pouring out. And I just wondered if that to me feels like where the sort of the critical, it's all important, but like that to me feels like where there's criticalness and like a real need to slow down and kind of break that even into a 12-step process. And I just wonder if you could say a little bit about, I don't know if I made any sense to anybody, but if that you could say about what happened.
Yes, of course, it made a lot of sense what you said, and it's we all share that very same challenge, and I won't say more about it now. No, we don't really have the time, and I really want people to experience something. But what I do want to say is I'd be happy to send out the handouts, whatever way, Lynn, you guys have, I don't know, but I'd also be happy to even put in a little bit more what I'm not having time to share. The only thing I want to say to you right now is, let's say you have a 2-minute difficult situation with someone. The only way to slow it down is to sit down at home, take 1.5 hours, and take all the time it needs to go into these 2 minutes again. And that's when you will get beyond all this jerk and fascist and all that. It really does take time. but you can't on the spot. It's impossible at first. It takes a lot of learning to be quicker to detect what's in us. It's just, you know, it's all practice, and then it becomes faster and faster. That's all I can say. I think we don't have to break it down more in 12 steps and whatever. I just think we have to take the time, that's all. And maybe have a companion who can help us with this. That's very helpful a lot of times. Having a skilled and trained listener who can say, okay, here you're getting caught, listen again, you know, like that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Amona.
Yes. Okay. So now, if you can check with yourself again, make if you're comfortable as you are, and you can have your pen and paper nearby you. I will also, in the process, ask you to write. Of course, you write if you want. You don't if you don't. You close your eyes if you want, or not. And so adjust my words to how it works for you, okay? The writing is very helpful though. And I will also put onto the screen the feelings list and the needs list. And I would encourage you, when I mention it, that I have brought them up, to open your eyes, take a look, and scribble some words that resonate with you. And if something, and it's going to be fast paced, okay, this going from one aspect to the next. And if there's something, nothing comes to you, just don't worry about it. You can keep moving to the next, and you have a blank. It really, yes, however it time-wise works for you. I will make a suggestion how you can divide your paper. I'll show this right now. So just like this, very simple, one field all across on the top, and then the rest divided in 4 fields. I have put these numbers in. If you can put those onto your paper as well, because I'm going to refer to as now put your words into the field 1 or 2 or 3. And that way we don't need to think too much in the process. It stays simple. Okay, 1 field on top, or fields 2, 3 is on the left, 4, 5 is on the right. I'll stop sharing. Take a last look if you're not done yet. Okay. All right, so let's have a minute of just you going into yourself, maybe in your own way to ground, to make sure you're present to whatever's going to show up for you. Just maybe some conscious breaths, or feeling your weight as it's carried. Maybe the space around you can support you as well. The space you're sitting in. And into your state of presence and groundedness, I invite you to remember a situation, you and one other person, where something might still be unresolved. Something was difficult, and you become interested in looking into it again. It's easiest if you choose you and one other person rather than a group. And it's also easier if you know this person for a while rather than a complete stranger for this process that we're doing. And see what might come in your memory. What images might come? Maybe you remember words that were said. And then pretend you can be neutral about that situation and you just describe the situation. What happens? What happened at the time? When something got triggered in you, what happened? And you can write that on the top in field number 1 of your paper. 2 sentences maybe. This is what happened. And whenever you're done writing, if you could please look up so that I get a sense of when most of you are finished. Or you can have your eyes closed. You don't have to look at me, but just not onto your paper anymore. So I have some sort of signal. Okay. All right. Now stay with that situation longer. You might look at the sentence, at the situation you described, or just remembering inside, sitting with it. And let the feeling come up that happened in that situation, or maybe even happens for you right now as you remember. What did you feel in that moment? And it's very helpful to actually feel the feeling or to remember it if you remember the situation in great detail. Words, the place, the atmosphere, time of day maybe. You really zoom into that memory. Or if it gets too much, you zoom out, you choose a further distance. And that, whatever that feeling is, can a few words describe that? Keywords, the feeling. And I'm going to share also my screen now in case whoever wants to look at the feelings list to see if one of those fits, and if you want to also write that down. And I'm going to scroll down in a moment, and if you didn't see them all yet, it doesn't matter, just to see whatever you do see. And there's more. And into field number 2 on the upper left, you can just put a few keywords. What is your feeling now as you remember, or what was the feeling? And now, when that feeling happened, check with yourself, what need wasn't met? And this unmet need, that's what triggered this feeling. I'm going to share the needs list with you. And I'll scroll down. And then you can write what comes in the field number 3, lower left. And then just pause for a moment here. Maybe close your eyes, see how it is now. And how you're being with what's there. And now project yourself into the other person. So you already have the description of the situation, that's clear. What might the other person have felt in that moment? It's as if you put yourself into the other person's skin. I'll share the feelings again in case someone wants to look. Writing those into the field number 3 on your paper, upper right, F4, sorry. And now ask yourself, from where did these feelings arise in the other person? What of their needs wasn't met? What of their needs in that same situation? And that's the field number 5, lower right. And then again, just pause with it all. And see how is this now? Having recognized your needs, your feelings, and the other person's feelings and needs. Maybe you want to look at the paper, you see them right next to each other now. Your needs and the other's needs, if something came. And if not, you stay with what's interesting to you. You might notice your inner atmosphere right now, how it is. So we'll have the breakout room so you can give that just a little bit more time and space. When you look at your paper, whatever attracts you, whatever feels like, oh, I want to stay with that a little bit longer, the focusing way. Okay, yes, welcome back everybody. So we have just a few more minutes. And I'm wondering, Christine, I don't know about technology, but I guess the chat is open or could be opened and people could either share verbally or type something in the chat, what was maybe meaningful. Yeah. Maybe I say one thing is we didn't get to the wish. You might have noticed that that's a whole different story. I just wanted to make sure we get in touch with feelings and needs, which is the very foundation. And also to see your needs next to the others, and your feelings next to the others can be super helpful. And then the wish comes later. Okay.
Just want to start by saying that it was a very helpful process for me. I went over something that just sort of stuck out for me, a casual something that happened between me and a friend. And it was so helpful to think about all of those those underneath issues, including my own needs.
Including your own needs, yes.
Yeah, I also appreciate this process so much, Amona. Thank you. And to be able to be a part of it again and again, the repetition. And what I found so interesting was I connected with a body sense and could find the feeling and the need. And right at the end of my process, Gray was my listener, I was able to find this, like, what this body sense wanted was to find the wish. I didn't have time, but it was like, okay, I know what I'm going to do sitting in my hour and a half. It's like, it's looking, it's searching. And it was like, by you naming that part of the process was so helpful, because I could feel where it is. It's like, I just have to name it, or so. Thank you.
Yes, yes. And I keep seeing you do that. Like,
It's right
where it
here.
is, it's somewhere at the right.
Right here.
Yes, it's right there. Yeah. Okay. Yes, thank you.
I think for me, I'm like a little bit agitated because I think getting to the wish would have helped me, because I get stuck in, when I think about how they feel, then I want to fix and make them feel better. And then I'm not really taking care of myself at that point. So I'm sort of like, oh, I need to get to the wish.
Yes. Okay. All right. Yes. And see, that's the timing challenge. And I can only say one thing from my past experience with other people is there seem to be two key points that are most helpful in this process. One is recognizing your own need and the other's need. That's really something that helps. And the second thing that helps after that is to come up with your wish and not make it a compromise wish. Your wish, not thinking first of all, well, is it realistic and all that. As first step, this would be my wish. Then you can still consider that what would the others wish and how could this come to one thing that's doable. But that's separate steps, really just only you without trying to help out. Very important in this process.
Yeah, it was very, very helpful to be able to identify another person's need as well as my own. Very helpful in the process. But I just noticed that my impulse was to jump to, oh, what do I need to compromise to meet their, yeah.
Yes, yes. And Marshall Rosenberg is very, very, very radical with this. He says, no compromise. It is not needed ever. He says ever. So, yes.
I just want to say quickly, I kind of felt a sadness and a frustration because I knew what my need was with a friend for mutuality, but I didn't feel that, and this is a feeling, kind of, or a thought really more than a feeling, that with this particular person wouldn't have the empathy for mutuality and put it back on me. So I was just thinking that it's really important to have two people in resolving the conflict who you can work with, that it's not just coming from me, that there needs to be an openness and a vulnerability with another person to be able to work through the conflict. So I felt a little frustration in the thought that this person would be defensive if I discussed mutuality.
Yes. Well, you know, sometimes let's say you go through a process by yourself, which was within a person where you know that kind of communication isn't possible. Sometimes when you get to a point where you really realize the other person is not able to fulfill my needs, they simply aren't. And if it's a very, very clear realization, it's also then relatively easy to say either, okay, I have to step away, or I'm going to fulfill their need. It becomes very easy when it's so clear, you know? And so, but that process takes place with yourself. It might not possibly take place with the other person. It might, like you said, if there's no resonance and not this it might be too difficult.
So it has to be some kind of acceptance of that the other person may be limited in certain ways, and it's up to me what I
Sometimes,
want
yes.
to do, how I want to
Sometimes, yes.
forward
And
with
it's
it.
Yes, and it still has to be a very honest question. Am I willing to then fulfill their need, or am I not? And then to whatever risk that takes to step away. Usually stepping away from something involves a lot of risk on some level. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I will
And one-
share a minute, because I think that the idea of no compromise is a wonderful idea with yourself, that when you feel the wish, it needs to be the big wish. And that's very much what we have in focusing. But that's very different than the demand from the other person, the requirement from the other person. This is the big wish we send out to the universe. And then there's something different about what can happen, what's possible with this other person. But that the real need and the real wish is you and the universe. And that other person may not be able or willing, because of their needs or whatever, to respond to your wish. And it might not even be safe, helpful to express that wish to the other. I want you to always love me and never criticize me. And I mean, this would be my wish, but but that isn't a wish to the other person as much as, unless we own it, really. Like, what I really want is, I remember in my youth dealing with non-monogamy and getting to the point where I was saying to my partner, what I really want is to be able to just explore all the other people, and I want you to stay home and be faithful to me. And to get oh my God, there you are. To express that wish.
That
Yes.
sounds reasonable, Lynn.
Well, it brought laughter into a very strained situation, so it was useful.
I just like the idea of no compromise ever, as a starting, it's I have a translation of that is surrendering the delusion of separation. It's that there is no compromise. I don't need to give any part of myself up, it's the delusion of separation that I take about. So
Yeah.
Interesting. Yes, I don't have to give up any part of me.
Right.
yeah.
Oh, I'd like to engrave that.
Yeah.
I'm writing it down.
Me too. Amona, I just love the clarity that this introduces me or reintroduces me to. I feel I could take this course over and over again. I hope you offer it again. I mean, the course I took with you before. It just gives me such hope, because I'm a person where emotionality dominates me so much, and I get so lost, particularly in my relationship with my daughter. And it's like just to emerge from this and feel like a glimmer of hope that I can have more clarity, and then I can talk. I just realize you just can't communicate when you're a mushball. You need that clarity, and these steps are so helpful in that process.
Yes. You can't talk unless there's a clarity within.
Okay. This is Amona's request, and it's so fitting. It's a Rumi quote. Out beyond the ideas of right doing and wrongdoing, there is a field. I'll meet you there.
Mm. Yes. Very fitting. Thank you again, Amona, so much.
Yes, very welcome. Thank you all for joining. Unknowingly what you're going to get into, a lot of you.